Aslan. 19th. The price, July 4th. Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace. Amelia Earhart. At 5 o'clock on the morning of July the 4th, a grim group of men walked down the upstairs hall of the East Wing of the White House and knocked on the door of the presidential bedroom. They were Vice President Hugh Jenner, Admiral Hector Brava, General Albert Scheisskopf, and Special Agent in Charge Lee Lyons, who was acting as escort to the Vice President on this occasion. Jenner knocked long and loud and called out, "Mr. President, this is Hugh Jenner. We need to speak with you. The matter is urgent." Hunter Wallace finally opened the door, wearing pajamas and belting a bathrobe around his waist. "What the hell, Hugh?" he demanded. "Mr. President, we have some bad news," said Jenner formally. "Could you please close the door and step into the hall? This information is significantly above Miss Halberstam's security clearance level, and I would prefer that she didn't overhear." Once the door was closed and Wallace stood with them in the hallway, Jenner remorselessly laid it all out. "We have news from Montana, and it couldn't be worse. Combined Military Group South has ceased to exist. It has been almost completely wiped out by the enemy in a night attack, in a matter of hours." "Almost?" asked Wallace woodenly. Scheisskopf spoke up. "Oh, we are getting some scattered radio chatter, which indicates that a few isolated companies and smaller units down to squad level, even individual soldiers, may have broken out of the encirclement and are attempting to fight their way eastward, back onto United States soil. May I remind you that the entire state of Montana is United States soil, General," said Wallace in a wooden voice. "Of course, Mr. President," replied Scheisskopf soothingly. "Not good," thought Hugh Jenner. "Only a nodding acquaintance with reality, and that may be receding in his rear-view mirror fast." "Not good," he went on. "It gets worse. The relief column headed toward Anaconda was defeated and dispersed outside Billings last night by the Nazi 7th Army, who are now entering the city." "Dispersed? What do you mean dispersed?" demanded Wallace. "I mean they were reduced to a panic-stricken rout, and they are now running from the enemy in complete disorder. It's been a very bad 24 hours. What you have to understand, Mr. President, is that the United States has lost the war. In point of fact, the war was lost within the first 24 hours. Because without massive and overwhelming air power and high-technology surveillance, the United States military is a second-rate fighting force at best due to the poor mental and moral quality of the people who comprise it. But that's spilled milk. We have to deal with the reality on the ground. Group Center and Group North are now in extreme danger. They are isolated and surrounded by vastly superior forces, and the best we can hope for is to extricate those men with their lives intact, so that the United States of America still has at least a few soldiers left. I have a sneaking suspicion that once the magnitude of this total clusterfuck can no longer be concealed from the American people, and the whole world understands what has happened in the past 2 weeks, we are going to need all the armed men we can to keep order and maintain our own positions. You have to make the call, Mr. President." "Make what call?" asked Wallace. "Send the email, make the TV or internet transmission, however it is to be done, and I admit that even I'm not sure how we get in touch with them," admitted Jenner. "And in some way, you have to make the call to the Commander-in-Chief of the enemy armed forces, President Henry Morehouse of the Northwest American Republic. The nation we are at war with, and which will now remain a nation because we have failed. You have to negotiate the withdrawal of our remaining forces alive from their present state of encirclement and siege, and you have to try and broker a peace that will at least keep them from grabbing any more of the United States or Canada and getting more non-white and Jewish people to exterminate. We've lost, sir. You have to pick up the pieces now." The president ignored him as if he had not spoken. "I'm sorry to hear about the loss of so many fine American fighting men and women," said Wallace. Jenner noticed the president's hands beginning to tremble and his eyes beginning to twitch and roll a bit. Definitely not a good sign, thought the vice president to himself. Jenner had always been of the private opinion that Hunter Wallace was not completely stable in his mind, and that any major setback or a serious crisis that threatened his massive ego might produce unfortunate results. Obviously, we need to convene an emergency meeting of the War Cabinet to consider what measures to take. I think we all know what advice Angela and Mr. Schiff and Secretary Chalupiak will proffer. and in light of these developments, perhaps I need to reconsider. Angela Herrin and Ronald Schiff won't be proffering you any advice ever again, Mr. President, said Jenner brutally. They're both dead. They were assassinated last night just before midnight at almost the same time but in different locations in the District of Columbia. They were shot and bombed by unknown assailants, although I don't think we need to offer any prizes for guessing who those assailants were. Lee Lyons spoke up. Mr. President, since this seems to have become a war of assassination now, I have ordered special security units to the homes of Secretary Chalupiak, Secretary Modlin, and all the rest of the cabinet, and emergency protocols will be in force for the duration. Angela and Ron? Said Wallace, gaping at them. Both of them dead? Yes, sir, said Jenner. You idiot, shouted Wallace. Jesus Christ, what have you done? I beg your pardon, sir? Asked the Vice President, nonplussed. You don't think I know you did it? Raved Wallace. Unknown assailants, my ass. It was you who had them killed, wasn't it? Of course it was. I always knew that you hated my Jewish advisors, and you were jealous of them because of their special relationship with God and their special relationship with me. But are you really so anxious to save your house or your lot or whatever in Portland that you had them both murdered? What? Said Jenner, dumbfounded. It's not just unconscionable, it's fucking stupid, shouted Wallace. Do you have any idea who you've pissed off now? A world political and financial power so great that they could even survive the total loss of their entire ancestral nation and shrug it off like it was a mere hiccup. Who in God's name do you think has initiated and decided every major world event for the past century? Does the name Bilderberg mean anything to you? Ever heard of the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the ADL, the Aaron Habrit? You're a Freemason, for Christ's sake, so you ought to know who really runs the world. Yes, I do know, which is why I would never do anything like that, cried Jenner in denial. Jesus, Hunter, do you think I'm stupid enough to bring the Aaron Habrit and the Mossad down on my ass? You better hope and pray you can prove you had nothing to do with it, Hugh, warned Wallace. Angela Herrin and Ronald Schiff were considered by their own kind to be tzaddikim, living saints whose very existence sanctified the Jewish people in the eyes of God. Now you or somebody has killed them, and I find it mysteriously convenient that their deaths come at a time when the apocalypse option is on the table. It is not on the table, sir, said Jenner flatly. It cannot be on the table. Going apocalyptic would damn the United States in the eyes of all mankind for the rest of recorded history, no matter what the cause. And this is your decision to make. Since when? Demanded Wallace. Maybe that's why Angela and Ron died? They were practice runs so I could be murdered by traitors in my own party in my own White House in order to save a gang of racist murderers in your stupid house in Portland? Were you in on it? Wallace demanded of Lyons. Huey, here doesn't have his own assets for wet work, so he would have to get some triggermen from somewhere. One of your covert op squads, Lee? Figure to change horses in midstream, get in good with the next guy in the Oval Office, maybe help put him there, eh? No, sir, you're wrong, said Lyons, stunned. I find your insinuation insulting and offensive. Blackwater, then, mumbled Wallace, his eyes rolling. Yeah, Blackwater sounds likely. Those goons will kill for anyone who pays them enough. He turned and looked at Admiral Brava and General Scheisskopf. How about you two? Were you in on it? He cut their protest short. Never mind, I don't know whether to believe you, but it doesn't matter. Suddenly it's all clear now. I know what I have to do. He turned and opened the bedroom door, stalked inside, and they could hear the click as he locked it. My God, the President of the United States has lost his mind, breathed Brava. And locked himself in with a Nazi spy, muttered Lyons. What? Exclaimed Brava. Well, maybe, said Lyons with a shrug. I'm pretty sure the WPB or the CMI or whatever leprechauns pulled these killings off last night have an agent or a source of information in the White House. And I think it may be the president's current bedmate, but I can't prove it. Yet, maybe if it is her, she's drugging him, and that's why he's acting so loony, suggested Jenner. They seem to have some kind of capability like that. I can't get the pictures of Kenesha Knight being chased through the parking lot by men in white coats and Marlon Bagwell running down the halls of the White House flapping his arms and clucking like a chicken out of my head. Lyons shook his head. No, sir, I don't think so. Ever since Clinton the First, the president has always been subjected to random drug testing and tox screening by the Secret Service, assisted by the staff at Walter Reed. Sounds like a good idea, muttered Scheisskopf. When I was young and just out of West Point, I knew some officers who served, under Billy Boy. Apparently, his nasal passages were as slick as an ice rink. His medical records are still classified as top secret even to this day, Jenner told them. I imagine some of those presidential talk screens down through the years showed up some interesting results. Well, Hillary used to test positive for testosterone supplements she took, said Lyons. She was pretty much a man when she died. She always was, said Jenner. But go on, Agent Lyons. Lyons nodded and did so. If a president doesn't voluntarily comply, then the Secret Service has to covertly collect specimens, which I won't get into, but this president has always given voluntary blood samples. We stepped it up after the Bagwell incident. The president himself was concerned that Mr. Bagwell's behavior might have been biochemical in origin, and somebody might have been slipping him a chickie, so to speak. The last time was 6 days ago, and his blood work came back positive only for Viagra and some alcohol. I have to say, in all honesty, that President Wallace has never been a drug user, whatever else he's never used drugs, and if George Halberstam or anyone else is doping him, it's not something that's showing up on his tests. Mr. Bagwell and Kenesha Knight were clean too. Makes you wonder if the Northmen really do have some sort of alien mind control weapon that drives people insane. This is America. Our whole world is insane, said Hugh Jenner broodingly. Down the hall, 3 Secret Servicemen suddenly appeared from the West Wing below, marching in lockstep, led by the huge Negro Jimbo Hatting, who looked like a refrigerator in an Armani suit. They walked up to the men in the hall. A boss man sent for me, said Hatting apologetically to Lyons. Nothing unusual in that, James, said Lyons. You are his personal agent, after all. Yes, sir, Agent Lyons. But this morning he talking crazy, explained Hatting. Fit, he says you and Mr. Jenner whacked them Jews last night. I told him that can't be, because when there's any killing to be done around the White House, I'm the one who's gonna be doing it. I'm the nigga who put to black in black ops, so to speak. True, said Lyons. Did he believe you? I think so, said Hatting. But the man's mind ain't right this morning. I can tell. Well, we've had some bad news from the front, said Jenner. Gentlemen, I think we need to get to the Situation Room. As they left, Lyons leaned over and said to Hatting, Jimbo, Georgia Halberstam is now under a Code 2 security watch. Last night's events have made people around here a bit more inclined to listen. When you're not actually escorting the president today, I want you to keep up with her whereabouts and follow her around on your phone. I'll send you the feed from the control room. Know where she is at all times, and every second you don't have your eyes on the president, they should be on her. Dig it? Fenimos is deaf, said Hatting. Back in the Situation Room in the West Wing, Admiral Hector Brava turned off the room's internal electronic recording system. Any few words in private, Mr. Vice President, he said. Is the president going to be all right? Is he flipping his lid? Asked Scheisskopf more bluntly. For the moment, yes, but can you blame him? Jenner told them. Hunter Wallace's whole career has been aimed at this one moment. Today was supposed to be his hour of triumph. On the nation's birthday, he was supposed to announce that the nation was whole again. Now all that's in the crapper, and when the true dimensions of what has happened finally sink in, the entire country is going to be out for his blood, including Congress, of course. No congressional waiver on a third term for our Hunter, and even though he only has a few months left in office, he will almost certainly be impeached out of sheer political bloodlust for revenge, probably successfully for once. The Clintons could all 3 slither out of it, but Wallace is no Clinton, and this fuck-up is too big for him to dodge. Somebody's got to carry the weight for the first outright defeat this country has ever known. If they don't impeach, they'll wait until he's out of office and then prosecute him for criminal incompetence or treason by negligence, or something of the kind, and he's made enough enemies so we could see the spectacle of a former president actually doing hard time and giving up the booty. Not our first defeat, actually, if you want to look at the historical record, said Brava. There was the War of 1812 in Vietnam. Hell, the British burned this very house to the ground, and yet today most people don't even remember, and those who do think we won that war. We eventually withdrew from Iraq and Afghanistan with armed enemies still in the field against us, which goes against every military definition of victory, despite how the politicians may spin it. Maybe the president can spin this? Yeah, well, President James Madison also had the Battle of New Orleans to end that ridiculous little 1812 spat on a high note, pointed out Jenner, even though it was fought 2 weeks after the war ended. Tell me, gentlemen, do either of you have any ideas on how we can throw our president a quick victory in the next few hours that he can spin on TV as an American triumph and get all the yahoos chanting, USA, USA? No, sir, admitted Brava. Nor do I. But the trouble is, Wallace thinks he has one to hand, said Jenner grimly. He's got that damned briefcase and those nuclear attack codes, or he will have if he calls the Pentagon and has Patterson bring them. And we have no legal authority to stop him if he does. The fear of losing his legacy and his reputation before history may push him into doing what the Kikes and the Dye couldn't. But we can talk to him. Is he sane? Persisted Scheisskopf. Jesus, I hope so, said Jenner. Had Hugh Jenner been able to see into the presidential bedchamber, he would have been much more disturbed and much less sanguine about Hunter Wallace's sanity. The normal morning routine was for Georgia to get up early, take a quick shower, get dressed, and leave before the president's own valet arrived at 7 a.m. to lay out fresh underthings, a new shirt and tie, and a newly dry-cleaned suit for the chief executive's workday. Now Wallace was throwing on his clothes from yesterday and making a bollocks out of knotting his tie in the mirror. Unshowered, unshaven, his hair wild and uncombed, he looked like a rabid gopher. He was also muttering to himself. Georgia watched him from the bed. "What's up, Hunter?" she asked, although she had sneaked a peek at the news on her phone, and she already knew what was up. She had. Wondered how she would feel when she heard that Angela Herrin and Ronald Schiff and Elmore Pettis were dead because of her, and to her surprise, she didn't feel a thing. It was part of the job. I guess I must be getting into this Mata Hari gig, she thought to herself. Secret pre-to-dawn conferences in the hallway? Sounds serious. She expected him to tell her about his 2 staff members who had been blown away the night before. Instead, he turned to her with wild eyes and said, "They're trying to destroy me." "Huh?" she asked in surprise. "Who's trying to destroy you? The Northwest Republic?" Well, they are, she thought. Them too, but mostly my own vice president, and those moron Pentagon generals who were too stupid to win a simple war, and now they're going to try and blame it all on me. They never believed in my vision. They never really understood what I understood, that you have to get on the right side of the chosen of God, and God will bless one's endeavors. That goes for nations, as well as individual people. But they're too stupid to understand now. They've fucked it all up, and they think they're going to drag me down and make me carry the weight for this. No way, Hosea, ain't happening. Well, by God, we'll see who's fucking president of these here goddamned United States. Hunter Wallace was still jabbering to himself in the same monotone as he shambled out the door, his fingers still twitching spasmodically at his throat trying to tie his necktie. Georgia stared after him, and then pulled her phone out of her purse. She quickly texted "You broke his brain" and then covered it with an obscene cartoon and added a text to Talia. "I love the smell of anal-ease in the morning," and sent it off, smiling to herself at Robert Campbell's probable reaction on receiving it. She'd learned in the past few months that Bobby was a bit of a prude, a species of person who no longer existed in the USA. She attributed this to his growing up in a society that was struggling back to sanity and decency, and she had come to envy his ability to be shocked and offended by anything. It was a trait she and all Americans had lost long ago. She got up and headed for the shower. Several minutes later, Special Agent in Charge Lee Lyons got a call from the control room. "Sir, this is Agent McMahon," said the voice in his ear. Right after POTUS departed the residence, POTUS sent out a video text to her stepsister Talia Halberstam. "I'm forwarding it to your phone." Lyons waited a few moments and saw the cartoon. "What the hell is that?" asked Lyons, staring at it. "Oh, that's from that new Shep Silverstein cartoon show, sir," said McMahon. "Silly little buggers, the one about the gay school children. Oh yeah, I saw a few of those. They're pretty funny." "So she's sending her sister sodomy jokes at 6 in the morning?" asked Lyons. "I checked her phone log, sir, and she and Talia Halberstam do a lot of texting back and forth," said MC Man. "Run it through a decrypt program," ordered Lyons. "You have all her other outgoing texts and video texts archived?" "Of course, sir," said Agent MC Man. "Standard procedure. Run them all through decrypt while you're at it," Lyons told him. "Get back to me with what you find, if anything." Roger that, sir. Then the whole game changed. President Hunter Wallace stuck his disheveled head out of the Oval Office door and said, "Lee, I'm expecting Colonel Patterson and 2 other officers to be arriving from the Pentagon in about 20 minutes. When they arrive, please let them through. Until then, I don't want to be disturbed." Yes, sir," said Lyons, stunned at what he heard. "Would you like the mess to send up some breakfast?" "Yes, that would be nice," said Wallace. "Angela's dead now, and she's not here to ride my ass about my eating and my weight. So tell the kitchen I'll have a Denver omelet with a side of about 6 strips of bacon and sausage patties, orange juice, whole wheat toast with real butter, and lots of those little plastic packs of grape and apricot jelly. Oh, and a pot of coffee with real cream and sugar." The president closed the door. "So that's what a head of state eats in the early morning hours before he kills 10 or 20 million people," mused Lyons. "I wonder what Stalin had for breakfast." The Secret Service man pulled out his phone, flipped it open, and called Vice President Jenner. "Sir, this is Lyons," he said. "I thought you should know that the president has called for the football. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson is on his way with 2 other officers, presumably in compliance with the launch protocols." In the Situation Room, Jenner put down the phone, aghast. "He's called for the football!" He told Brava and Scheisskopf, "Patterson and 2 officers will be here in a matter of minutes." "What officers?" demanded Scheisskopf. "He already has 2 of the most senior field-grade officers in the military right in the building to countersign the launch order. Would you do it at least, in time for his speech this afternoon, so we can tell the world how he blew up the big bad Nazis, and sorry if you live a little too far west and you and your kids end up glowing in the dark?" asked Jenner. "It doesn't have to be you 2, you know. The statute just says 2 field-grade officers have to certify to the White House military attaché, before he turns over the briefcase and the keys to the briefcase, that the president appears to be lucid, in control of his faculties, and not under the influence of alcohol or fucking methamphetamine. The statute doesn't specify which 2 field-grade officers. Wallace isn't Bill Clinton and he's not under the influence. He's just crazy as a shithouse rat. I don't know who these 2 unnamed officers accompanying Lieutenant Colonel Patterson are, but I would imagine they have been pre-selected for their political reliability. A last present from Angela Herrin before the Northmen caught up with her last night."
"God, I hope that bitch died hard." "God damn it," cursed Brava. "Admiral, the Pentagon has done studies to extrapolate and predict what would happen if we ever did actually use nuclear weapons against the NAR, am I correct?" asked Jenner. "Of course, sir," said Brava. "It's ironic. One of the objections that other racists used to throw up against the whole Northwest idea, back in the aughts and teens when they were all just a bunch of assholes playing with their computers on the internet, was that the party could never establish a successful independent nation in the Northwest because the U.S. government would simply nuke any such country. The idiots who were jabbering this clearly didn't have clue 1 as to the reality of just what strategic nuclear weapons are for and what they can do. For the United States to use nuclear weapons anywhere on the North American continent, no matter what the provocation, would be like taking out an attacker by detonating a bomb strapped to your own body. Yeah, you can stop the assailant from hurting you, but blowing yourself up in the process kind of defeats the whole purpose. Same with this nuclear strike the president is apparently going to order. The prevailing jet stream in North America blows west to east, and the wind does not recognize the Northwest Republic's border or stop at the Mississippi. Even if only a few of those missiles got through the Northmen's plasma ray devices, the fallout would continue on across the upper 2/3 of North America, across the Atlantic, over to Europe, etc. Wallace probably has this common layman's idea that a nuclear device is just a big firecracker that makes a mushroom cloud and leaves a really big hole in the ground. If more than a handful of the warheads detonate, we could be contaminating the entire northern hemisphere and rendering it uninhabitable, which is basically the last remaining economically and industrially productive part of the world that's still functioning, other than the odd southern hemisphere exceptions like Australia and New Zealand. The fabric of what remains of Western civilization is very thin and weak, Mr. Jenner. Hunter Wallace could be about to bring it all down, not just the Northwest. China and India would step forward to fill the gap, and that's all she wrote for the United States and Europe and for, well, better not say it, recommended Jenner. But they may have the Situation Room bugged as well. Alien technology or not, Admiral.
Do you think this blue light thing the Northmen have can stop all 200 of our nuclear missiles? Asked Vice President Jenner. I just don't know, sir, said Brava, shaking his head. They sure as hell did a number on our jets, and even more to the point on our Tomahawks and other cruises. The number of missiles that actually got through was less than 10%, and some of those appear to have been knocked off course by hits from the enemy plasma rays. So let's guesstimate on the high side and assume a survival rate of 10%, said Jenner. Out of 200 missiles, that means 20 nuclear warheads would get through. That's still enough to cause the kind of world-altering radiation contamination and environmental damage the planet can't afford. And depending on where they hit, it might not even win us the war. It might just piss the sons of bitches off. Then they retaliate with their gas and their germs out of suitcases all over the country. It's closer to 250 missiles if Wallace shoots the whole wad, which he'll probably do, said Scheisskopf. Thought we had thousands of nuclear warheads? Asked Jenner. We do, sir, said Scheisskopf. Back in the 20th century, we were turning them out like lollipops. They're that old? Asked Jenner in surprise. Yes, sir, said Scheisskopf. They've been sitting gathering dust in their bunkers since the 1950s, some of them. We have no shortage of nukes, but what we're short on is functioning ICBMs. Bear in mind, Mr. Vice President, this system has been in existence for almost 75 years now, but it's never actually been tried, and so no one knows how or even if it will work in the real world. We used to test fire the missiles on occasion, out over the Nevada desert, but all the environmentalists and peace creeps screamed and hollered and demonstrated, so we haven't even done that in decades. There's never been any serious nuclear threat to this country since the 1990s, at least not from abroad. You can't shoot down a Haji on a Greyhound bus carrying a tactical nuke in the luggage compartment with a 3-stage rocket, costing $800 million a pop, at today's inflated rates. So when the time came every year to see who got the short end of the budget stick, guess who kept getting shorted? But don't worry. 250 missiles aimed at the Pacific Northwest can do damage enough to drop us all deep in the shit, even if only half a dozen of them get through and detonate. For example, suppose we miss Seattle and hit Vancouver? Is that possible? Asked Jenner, aghast. We know that some of the incoming cruises weren't destroyed, but were knocked off course, said Scheisskopf. Vancouver is just a hop, skip, and a jump across the straits from Seattle. Who knows, said Brava with a shrug. Most of this equipment is at least 50 years old, some of it older. The fire and mission control computers in those silos belong in a museum. Ray gun fire or not, it's possible a missile might miss a target, yes sir. But if even one gets through to Seattle, Vancouver and most of inhabited British Columbia will be contaminated by radioactive fallout and dust particles. If Spokane gets splattered good, the fallout and contaminants will fuck up the inhabited southern 20% of Alberta and do a number on Calgary. Jenner scowled, meaning that among other things, we will end up with an embittered nation of people who hate us, with good reason, all along our northern border from Montana to Maine. And quite frankly, in the country's present weakened state, we can't afford to make an enemy even out of Canada. We've got to stop him. Can you invoke the 25th Amendment, sir? Asked Brava. The language of the amendment is unclear as to exactly how a president's incapacitation is to be determined and by whom, said Jenner. Section 4 says that whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of Congress officially tells the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives in writing that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Got all that off by heart, have you, sir? Asked Brava, arching his eyebrows. I had occasion to look it up recently, replied Jenner coolly. The problem is time. I suppose if we had more of it, I could fill a conference room with some big dogs from Capitol Hill and persuade them that Hunter Wallace has lost his marbles, which in point of fact seems to be the truth. But Patterson and those 2 officers are on their way from the Pentagon with the football now. You'd need a psychiatrist's opinion that he was nuts, said Brava. That's an idea, said Jenner, flipping his phone open. Oh, time to get a team of shrinks in from Walter Reed and do all the formal inkblot stuff. But I know one shrink who might be willing to sign some kind of statement that the president is irrational, something we can wave under the noses of any congressional ad hoc committee or whatever. Plus, he's Jewish, which is always a plus. Jews invented both psychiatry and insanity to begin with, so he'll have credibility. Agent Lyons, this is Vice President Jenner. I want you to send a couple of your guys to locate the celebrity shrink, Dr. Jake Shapira, drag his ass out of bed and get him here to the White House. Yeah, him. His office is in the Watergate. I think he lives in Georgetown somewhere. Tell him it's a national security emergency or something and it's top secret, but he has to come now. Got it, sir, said Lyons. Yes, I know Doc Jake. I read his reports to the Secret Service on his governmentally sensitive patients. I need to have a word with him on the mental state of our Miss Halberstam, see if she's let anything unusual slip about her past or present political and racial attitudes, anything like that. I have his private number on file, so we'll find him and get him here as soon as we can. Jenner closed his phone and said, Admiral Brava, General Scheisskopf, is there any way that we can stall or sidetrack Lieutenant Colonel Patterson and whoever is with him on his way from the Pentagon? His phone buzzed and Jenner flipped it open. He spoke briefly and closed it. Cancel that. They're here now and headed for the Oval Office. Let's go. Jenner, Scheisskopf, and Brava managed to intercept the three men in uniform who had just arrived from the Pentagon in the lobby outside the Roosevelt Room. They were Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Pat Patterson, a thin, middle-aged officer who was the White House military attaché. Patterson was carrying a white metal briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, and he looked distinctly unhappy. He was accompanied by Major General Russell Fane and Colonel Nathan Rabinowitz. Brava stepped forward. Thank you for coming, gentlemen, he said, nodding towards Fane and Rabinowitz. Understand the President has summoned Colonel Patterson for consultation on possible options in view of the current crisis. He's in the Oval Office. General Scheisskopf and I will take you on through, Pat. You gentlemen can wait in the National Security Advisor's office. Can I have the White House mess send you up some coffee or some breakfast? General Fane gave his superiors a snappy salute. And the Commander-in-Chief has specifically requested that Colonel Rabinowitz and myself confer with him on the matter, Admiral, he said. That won't be necessary, General, said Scheisskopf. Admiral Brava and I can take it from here. I'm sorry, sir, but I spoke with the President not half an hour ago, and he was very specific. He wanted to see Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, Colonel Rabinowitz, and myself. Certain decisions have to be made. I believe he plans to give a briefing to the remaining members of the War Cabinet in the Situation Room later. Fane's voice was neutral and polite, but he clearly had no intention of backing down or allowing Brava or Scheisskopf to go in to see the President with them. Scheisskopf and Brava scowled. It was clear that a major military pissing contest was about to be unleashed when the President Hunter Wallace appeared in the doorway of the Roosevelt Room. He no longer resembled a rabid gopher quite so much, but there was something haunted and intense about him, like a man standing on the ledge of a 40th floor window who was about to jump. General Fane is correct, General Scheisskopf, he said. I need to speak with these three officers from the Pentagon for a bit. You and Admiral Brava will be brought into the loop soon enough. Hugh, could you see if you can round up the entire cabinet and get them here for a meeting in the Situation Room in 1 hour's time? Thank you. Mr. President, before you proceed, may we speak with you privately? Requested Jenner desperately. You may not, said Hunter Wallace, staring at them, his lips and cheeks trembling, his fingers writhing at his side in a bizarre rumba. I know what you want to say. You are afraid. You don't want me to use the power God has given me to make the whole world right again. You don't want me to grasp the destiny for which God has shaped me as his servant and the servant of his people. I do not wish to hear anything you have to say. From now on, you will obey orders only, or else I will have you arrested. And don't think I can't find someone willing to use the Dershowitz needles on you three. I wonder what I could get you to confess to. Wallace giggled. Oh yes, that opens fascinating possibilities. But now you bad men go away. I will call you when I need you, if I need you. You gentlemen come with me, please. Wallace turned around and led the three blank-faced Pentagon visitors through the Roosevelt Room and into the Oval Office. They could hear the snap as Wallace locked the door behind him. They stared at one another. Dear God, he's going to destroy the world, said Jenner as they trudged in despair back into the lobby of the West Wing. Why the hell didn't you men do something? There are at least 300,000 living American troops who will be in harm's way from those nuclear missiles as well? You're supposed to be men of action. Why didn't you do something?" he repeated. "Like what, sir?" said Brava with a sigh. "He is the fucking President of the United States. For 40 years I have been trained and conditioned always to obey the Commander-in-Chief, even when he's insane." "What did you want us to do?" asked Scheisskopf bitterly. "Pull our sidearms and shoot them all?" "One would have been sufficient," said Jenner, his blood freezing with horror in his veins at the thought of what was about to happen. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that," said Brava. "We're good at that in America," said Jenner bitterly. "Pretending we don't hear and see things, pretending inconvenient facts don't exist. The problem is, they do, and now reality is about to jump up and bite us and the whole world in the ass. Bummer, man, as my hippie parents used to say." Lee Lyons appeared at Jenner's side. "Dr. Shapira's on the way," he told the vice president. "I spoke with him on the phone myself." "You didn't tell him anything, did you?" asked Jenner. "No, sir, I just said the president was having a bad time personally due to the loss of his 2 favorite staffers, and we thought he needed somebody to talk to. Dr. Shapiro will be here in about half an hour. Actually, he seemed quite eager to come." "I can imagine he did," said Jenner with a wry smile. "Now he's got the ultimate celebrity patient. A madman in the Oval Office waving a nuclear warhead around instead of a junkie in a bodega with a $100 junk gun." "But there's something else, sir, if I could have a word in private." Lyons glanced at the Admiral and the General. "Go ahead, Lee," said Jenner, "since this is a crisis and these gentlemen need to know everything." "I just spoke with Agent McMahon down in the control room. On my instructions, he ran a number of archived outgoing phone calls made by Ms. Georgia Halberstam through a decryption program. Mostly calls to her stepsister, Talia Halberstam. He was looking for anything that might indicate that she's been communicating with suspect groups or individuals, anything political, anything that looked out of place." "And," demanded Jenner, "did he find anything? Is the bitch a goddamn Nazi spy?" grated Scheisskopf. "Wait, Halberstam's a Jewish name, isn't it?" asked Brava. "Halberstam is her stepfather's name," explained Lyons. "She's actually Gentile. She's officially a cataclysm survivor, and she gets the pension. But the fact remains she was born in the Northwest and she still has family there. There's nothing specific, but MC Man found some kind of weird program on the phone's chip that he can't identify," Lyons went on. "No idea what it is, but it's not standard on that or any other wireless chip. At the very least, that's a security violation. Possession of unlicensed and unapproved communication software of any kind inside a federal building or government department. 5 years in a penal factory right there. Something's going on with that girl, Mr. Vice President. And even if it's not what we fear, she's breaking the law and we need to detain her." "How is Wallace going to react to that, Hugh?" asked Brava. "Us busting his bit of fluff on the side is maybe the spy who's caused us to lose the war, and for all we know somehow managed to put the finger on Angie Herrin and Ron Schiff for last night's Nazi hitmen. I have no use for Nazi bitches, but we need to think, what will that do to the president's paranoia factor?" asked Scheisskopf. "Will it make him more or less likely to push the button?" "Unfortunately, he's pushing the button right now as we speak," Jenner reminded them. "Is he?" asked Brava. "Maybe, but the procedure does take time. It's not a literal button. There are all kinds of procedures, checks, counter-checks, authentications, and so on to go through. He actually has to call in the codes and orders to the Strategic Defense Command, and he also has to get a return acknowledgement and a ready from the officers in charge of each missile silo cluster, who will have to confirm their targets and that kind of thing, to make sure they fire at Seattle and not at Beijing because somebody forgot to update the computer program. We may have a little bit of time if we can impede that process." "Chum, how much time?" asked Jenner. "An hour maybe," said Brava. "Perhaps more if we could distract him with this woman's possible treachery long enough for this head shrinker you called to get here. Then we let the head shrinker take over, and maybe he in turn can stall the president while you get the Speaker of the House and President of the Senate over here, and while Al and I round up 20 field-grade officers for every Jew Fain and Rabinowitz can muster, to explain to Hunter Wallace why it's a bad idea to disembowel ourselves in an act of thermonuclear harakiri. In the meantime, what can we do with Fine and Rabinowitz and Patterson in there?" asked Jenner. "I can get on the horn to Fort Lee and get some Delta Force guys I know choppered in here who will do what I tell them, including arresting those two kikes and poor old Pat Patterson, offered Scheisskopf. In the President's presence, if we have to. That won't be necessary, General, said Lee Lyons. My men will detain the 3 officers, although I would prefer to wait until they leave the Oval Office so we don't upset the President. Jimbo Hatting would detain Jesus and gun down Mary and Joseph if I told him to do it. You're down with this, Lee? Asked Jenner. So long as the President is not harmed, yes, sir, said the Secret Service man. It's obvious to me that President Wallace is under a great strain. He is not thinking rationally, and he is doing things that endanger himself and others. My job is to protect the President from danger, including protecting him from himself if need be. It won't be the first time the Secret Service has had to clean some dirty presidential laundry, and when need be, we do it efficiently and discreetly. Don't you think Agent Lyons here has the duty to interrupt the President even at this crucial point with serious information of this magnitude? Information which directly affects the Chief Executive's personal security, suggested Brava. If I remember my White House security protocols, the Secret Service pretty much has the power to grab the wheel at any time if a threat to the President is identified, as the Halberstam woman may well be. He's right, sir, said Lyons. It will buy us some time and give us a chance to scope what the hell's going on in there, said Scheisskopf. Every minute he's talking to somebody, about anything at all, is a minute he's not pushing the button, said Jenner in agreement. All right, Lee, see what you can do. Jenner looked up and saw Georgia enter the lobby, on her way out the door. No, wait, I have a better idea. Georgia walked calmly toward the lobby door to the west wing, which was hidden from public view from Pennsylvania Avenue by thick hedges and shrubs. Once outside the door, she would descend into the artfully concealed tunnel that ran below Executive Avenue into the underground parking garage beneath the Executive Office building. There was a cab rank in the garage where she normally took a taxi home to her apartment, but today she would walk out of the garage and text Donald Duck to Bobby once she was clear. He would pick her up, and then would come one more rough part, the part where they would extract her daughter Allura from the Halberstam's house on K Street. Then it was out of this filthy city, back on the road, but this time going in the right direction, going home, with Montana gleaming in the distant skies ahead of them, and the house on Daly Avenue waited for her and Allura. Georgia was wrapped up in the nearness of home as she left this place for the last time. Through the doors, she could see the warm, clipped grass of the north lawn and hear the cars going by on Pennsylvania Avenue outside. Just a few more steps, out the door. Then she felt the hand on her shoulder. She turned and saw Agent Lee Lyons. His eyes were dead now, the dead of the American secret policeman in the suit who had terrorized white people in this land for a century. Somewhere, she could not for the life of her remember where, Georgia had read something about that on the internet. White male agents' eyes were always like that when the American suits came for you. Not full of hatred, or anger, or triumph like the black or brown or female agents, glorying in the destruction of the disobedient white people they so hated. White male feds moving in for their kills had lifeless eyes, like a shark or a doll, as if they'd switched off their brains and were running on some kind of autopilot. They were robots obeying the orders of the vast soulless machine that made them and nurtured them and owned them, in a way that was more terrifying and soul-destroying than the blows, slaps, shoves, rifle butts to the head and screamed obscenities of some bestial black or swaggering Latino trying to show his macho. Georgia saw the dead eyes of America looking at her now, and she knew. The Eater of Souls had found her, and now it was her turn. "Come with me, please, Miss Halberstam," said Lyons. "The Vice President of the United States wants to speak with you." She walked calmly, determined to show no fear as she was dragged into the machine. She accompanied the Secret Service men into the vice presidential office a few short steps away from the lobby door that had meant freedom moments ago. Jenner was sitting behind his desk, looking haggard. He stood up when she entered. "Miss Halberstam, good morning," he said in a low voice, gesturing toward a chair. "Please take a seat. I need to speak with you about a matter of some urgency." Georgia sat down. She was thinking rapidly. She decided that it was best not to play the dumb blonde, and she was tired of that role in any case. She wouldn't confess she would give Bobby his 24 hours, but she wouldn't play chicken shit games either. "Let me guess," she said to him. "Something is wrong with the president, and either you need to pick my brains about him or else you want me to try and talk to him about something. Am I right?" "You are," said Jenner with a nod. "To begin with, Ms. Halberstam, in all honesty and fairness, I need to tell you that Agent Lyons here has some questions about some of your outgoing phone calls and texts, but that is not why I wanted to speak to you. We need your immediate help on another matter. If we can resolve that satisfactorily, then the Secret Service will deal with the issue of your phone usage later." "Sir," said Lyons, astounded. "Later," repeated Jenner flatly. "Possibly next week sometime. Do you understand what I am saying to you, Miss Halberstam?" "I understand," said Georgia with a nod. Jenner continued, "The second thing I want to do is to apologize if during the past few months I have inadvertently said or done anything that might have seemed to you to indicate any, disdain or disregard on my part. You see, we need your help very badly indeed." "So it would seem," said Georgia with a smile. "You never said anything or did anything nasty to me, no sir. No needling little remarks or smirks behind my back like some. You just looked through me like I wasn't there, like most of the players around here did." "That must have been very useful, to be invisible," said Lee Lyons, scowling at her. "Oh, sometimes," she said with a glance at him. "When the President is about to launch a full nuclear missile strike against the Northwest Republic," said Jenner. "He is in the Oval Office right now, with some military officers, who we have reason to believe will do nothing to dissuade him, and who will actually encourage him. He will not listen to anyone, not to me, not to senior military men who believe as I do that such an act will be a catastrophe from which the United States will never recover, and which may well lead to the destruction of what is left of this country." "You want to stop him?" asked Georgia. "I thought you were from Oregon, and you wanted to destroy the Republic." "I am an Oregonian by birth, yes, but I am an American first," said Jenner. "That is where I differ from the people running things in Oregon now. I suppose in a way that's what it was all about, all that bloodshed and horror back then. Some of us wanted to give up on America. Some of us didn't. I didn't think if you were to ask them, sir, they would say it was because they wanted to secure the existence of their people and a future for white children," said Georgia. "At least, I remember hearing that phrase at the time. What exactly do you want me to do?" "Talk him out of it," said Jenner. "I understand that you still have family living in the Northwest, and so I will assume for that reason, if for no other, that you have a strong motivation to prevent an atomic attack on them. It is possible that Hunter Wallace will listen to you when he will listen to no one else, because of your, personal relationship." "Relationship?" said Georgia with a bitter laugh. "Is that what it is?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President. Please go on. If you can't talk him out of it, at least buy us some time," said Jenner. "We have someone else on his way who may be able to step in and give you a hand in keeping his finger off the button. Although it isn't actually a button. It's a series of commands he has to give to the units of the Strategic Defense Command. Appeal to his better nature, if you think he has one. Do, whatever you have to do in order to distract him from the contents of that briefcase." The Vice President was clearly uncomfortable with the topic. "Oh, you mean an impending nuclear holocaust might get him so horny he'll want to break for a quickie?" she said with a merry laugh. Then she stopped laughing. "I'll do what I can." "When?" "Now." "We need to get those 3 officers out of the Oval Office somehow," said Jenner. "Then we'll send you in. He's locked the door, but Agent Lyons has a master pass card." Lyons spoke up. "Sir, with all due respect, you want me to let her in to be alone with the President? At a time like this? Have you lost your fucking mind?" "No, but Hunter Wallace has," said Jenner seriously. "Lee, have you ever seen any of those old photographs from Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Pictures of the people who survived the atomic blast itself? Never mind the Northmen. I know you were a fatpo, and you fought them, and you don't care about them. But we have hundreds of thousands of American soldiers and Marines within the heavy fallout range of major target areas, not to mention over a dozen major cities in the United States and Canada, and millions of people in smaller American and Canadian cities and towns. Men, women, children, do you want them to die from the radioactive isotopes tearing their hearts and lungs to pieces and their burned flesh falling off their bones while they're still alive? All because a little tribe of Oriental parasites can't stand to lose their wealth and their power and their egomaniacal self-image as God's own butt buddies? What is about to happen is inhuman, and we have to try everything to stop it. Lyons' phone rang. He flipped it open and listened. "All right, Sanchez. Wait until they get downstairs, detain them and take them to the holding cells. No, I didn't say arrest them, I just said grab them and throw them in the can. We'll sort it out later. We have to keep them away from the president." He closed his phone. Those 3 Pentagon visitors got hungry and left the Oval Office for the mess downstairs looking for breakfast. "My guys are on them. The president is alone." "Volunteer luck," said Georgia to herself with a rueful smile. "What?" said Lyons. "Where the hell did you hear that expression?" "Another phrase I seem to recall from my dim past," said Georgia. "Well, do you want me to give it a shot?" "Why should we trust you?" demanded Lyons. "Logically, I suppose you shouldn't," she replied coolly, looking up at the Secret Serviceman's glaring face. "You're right, Mr. Vice President. I don't want Hunter Wallace exploding nuclear weapons in the Northwest Republic, and I will do what I can to prevent that. Do my reasons really matter?" "No," said Jenner. "Just try to buy us some time. When this other person gets here, we'll find some way to bring him in." Georgia rose from her seat. "Sir, I don't think this is a good idea," protested Lyons. "Give me your master key card in case he's locked himself in again," said Jenner, "and I'll do it. The responsibility will be mine. Otherwise, we'll have to knock on the door and try to talk her in, and that may waste time we don't have." Wordlessly, Lyons took the electronic card from his pocket and handed it over to the vice president. She followed him through the Roosevelt room to the door of the Oval Office. The huge Negro agent Jimbo Hatting was behind the security desk and he glared at her. But in the absence of any orders to the contrary, he let them pass. Jenner took the key card from his pocket and held it up to the lock. "Good luck, Miss Halberstam," he said. She looked at him. "Marvin Halberstam is the creep who married my mother. For the record, my name is Georgia Myers." "I'll remember that," said the vice president. He swiped the key card and the door to the Oval Office clicked open. Georgia went in and closed it behind her. Hunter Wallace was sitting behind the great mahogany presidential desk, the metal briefcase open before him. Papers were spread out on the desk in front of him, and he was holding several in his hand and reading some numbers off the page. "SDC Wichita, confirm command 3945 Alpha, check words Disco Duck. Confirm targets Eugene and Corvallis, Newport Naval Facility." Wallace looked up. "Hi, Georgie," he said like an excited child. "Hunter, stop," she said. "You can't do this." "Sure I can," he giggled. "I'm the president. I can do anything I want." "They're going against the apple of God's eye. Sorry they laughed at me and refused to recognize my genius back in those days when I offered myself to be their leader, but they chose that fat old fool instead, even though they all secretly knew I was better and smarter. Now they're going to pay. All of them. They refused to give me what was mine, and now they're going to burn. My friends aren't dead, you know," he said, leaning forward, speaking in a conspiratorial whisper. "They're here. Angela and Ron. Hugh Jenner and those cowardly generals had them murdered last night, but they're still here. I can hear their voices whispering to me right now, telling me what to do. I'm going to kill Hugh Jenner, too. Yes, SDC Omaha, this is the President of the United States speaking. Initiate Operation Apocalypse. Yes, that is correct. No, this is not a drill. Confirm command 7179er Epsilon, check words hee-haw. Confirm targets Kalispell, Whitefish Military Engineering Center, University of Montana at Missoula." He looked up at Georgia. "You do want me to drop a couple of extra hot shots on Missoula for you, dear, and make sure we fry that racist old man of yours to a real crispy critter?" In one instantaneous flash of cosmic consciousness, Georgia understood. This man was hopelessly insane, beyond all reason, and he was in the process of destroying her childhood and her blood right before her eyes. She knew what had to be done. She understood the price, and she accepted it. There seemed to be no conscious thought involved. Hunter Wallace had an archaic personal eccentricity. Instead of using a word processing or PowerPoint program, he was in the habit of correcting his speeches and making notations on hard copy documents with a large number 2 blue pencil. A number of these stood in a small wire canister on his desk, all of them daily sharpened to a needle-like point by his anal lesbian PA, Wanda Jankowski. Georgia picked up one of the pencils, leaned over the desk, and with all her strength rammed the point through Hunter Wallace's left eye deep into his brain. The president did not die immediately. He jumped up and screamed like an animal in mortal agony, blood spurting from his exploded eyeball in a fountain that soaked George's yellow blouse and leather skirt, and then he turned and ran headlong into the wall at full speed. He fell to the floor, flopped and writhing, vomiting, screaming again and again like a soul burning in hell, pissing himself and shitting in his pants. Then he quivered and died. The lich lay on the carpet, oozing blood and bodily fluids onto the great woven presidential seal in the rug that had featured in so many movies. There was a crash behind her as the door to the Oval Office was kicked almost off its hinges. Georgia turned and saw the huge black Secret Service man, Jimbo Hatting, standing in the doorway, his pistol leveled at her with both hands. He took one look at what had happened. "Bitch!" he screamed, spittle flying from his thick bubble lips. "Nigger!" Georgia said for the first and only time in her life. Then the bullet slammed into her,